Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rob Shmuel here with you, Rabbi Stephen S. Epstein, Rashbi, Rob Shmuel ben Yehoshua. What's in a name? You know, we're just studying Hebrew with my daughter, and we were talking a little bit about this notion of God and, what do we call God? We've got different names in Judaism for God. We have Yud He Vav He, we have Elohim, which is God's attribute of justice. We have El, which is kind of a Babylonian term for God, and it means God's power. We have Shaddai, enough, which, by the way, is a term that's in next week's Torah portion. Um, and there's lots of other ways of referring to God, Shemayim, heaven, right? But this Yud He Vav He is an interesting concept. Now, in the Christian religion, they say the word as it's written, Yehovah or Jehovah. Okay, we don't in Judaism because that word comes from the three tenses of the word to be. Haya was, Hoveh, which is an ancient Hebrew word meaning is, we don't use it anymore, and Yiyeh, will be. And the idea is that God is eternal and immortal. Yiyeh, Hoveh, Haya. God was, is, and always will be. How do you understand the concept of something, some being that has been around forever, that will continue to be around even when the universe is gone? Because according to the Torah, and according to the Bible, and according to science, the universe was created, the Big Bang Theory, it's expanding, and then one day, billions of years from now, maybe, there won't be a universe anymore, and then the process will happen all over again. So, how do you explain that there's a God that is beyond that? That is beyond the idea of having of being outside of time and space. We can't conceive of it because we're material beings. We have a brain that acts that activates our minds, right? Whereas God is just God, right? And the name Yud He Vav He reflects that. It's called, the word is ineffable, reflects the fact that we really can't understand that. And that's okay, because we understand God by what God does and how God works with us in the material sphere. So, okay, so having said that, we're going to get into it. And by the way, happy Hanukkah to all of you. And by the time a lot of you see this, it may be Hanukkah. You also may be seeing this afterwards or before, and Hanukkah is coming up pretty quick here, right? And as a host of other holidays of other religions, when my wife and I were getting married, the rabbi that was marrying us gave us this um, drosh, if you will, that basically Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Eid, whatever the others are, it's all basically the same holiday. They're holidays of lights, and it reflects an ancient holiday of the Saturnalia, when the ancient people saw that the sun, which seemed to be getting, the days were getting shorter and shorter, now they're getting longer and longer, and that was that celebration. So even though there is religious significance to these holidays, there's the base of it, which is that the winter solstice is over and now we're seeing more light. Okay, speaking of light, let's talk, and speaking of God acting, let's talk about this week's portion, Miketz, okay, which means after or the end. So here we have Joseph, who has been imprisoned. He was falsely accused. Potiphar's bored wife, saw some hot young guy in the household. Everybody was gone. She wanted him, and he resisted her urges, and so she was spurned, couldn't stand it. So she went to her servants and said, "Look what this foreigner did. He tried to attack me." And Potiphar threw him, his master threw him in prison. So why throw him in prison instead of having him killed for the affront of his wife? Well, he kind of knew who his wife was, but he had to act anyway. It was one of those things. Now, if we recall, Joseph was a prophet. He had the gift of prophecy. And in my mind, if you have the gift of prophecy, you are a prophet. If you have the gift of singing, you are a singer. Okay, it is what it is. If you have the strength and the gift of strength and ability, then you're probably an athlete. So what you are reflects your attributes. Joseph was a prophet. He was able to discern and understand dreams and understand the significance and what they had to do. Now, when most of us dream, and with a background of psychology, I've kind of studied this and looked at it. In my mind, what is a dream? You are basically synthesizing or integrating events from your life, and your mind gives form, not just to the events, but a lot of the feelings, a lot of the thinking that you had, and creates images, and you create images. When you have a nightmare, it could reflect some tragedy, right? Some trauma that you've had. And your brain, your mind is putting some form to those feelings. Well, Joseph was able to see beyond that. He was able to know that what he was seeing predicted future events. So here he is in prison, and Pharaoh has two disturbing dreams, or what he thinks is two disturbing dreams. And the cows come out, and they're the grazing, and they're nice and plump and full, very healthy cows. Out of the canal, out of the Nile River, come these 7 cows. They are gaunt, they are scraggly, definitely unhealthy, and they swallow the cows whole. And he's, it's a nightmare to him. He wakes up startled. Wow, what was that? Goes to sleep again. And it's kind of the same theme, except this time it's with ears of corn. So you have these healthy stalks of corn, and upgrow these 7 stalks of scraggly corn, and it interferes, it eats, swallows up the good corn. And Pharaoh's disturbed. He is so disturbed that he thinks maybe there's something more to it. So he calls in his necromancers, his wizards. If you're young, turn this off because it's a little disturbing. But what is a necromancer? You might hear the word necro, it means death. And basically what these people would do is they would read the bones of dead animals, or dead people. That's what they would do. That's how they would somehow discern or predict what was going to happen. And they had explanations, but Pharaoh just didn't make sense to him. So along comes the cupbearer, who was imprisoned and restored back to his position, who comes and says, there was, Pharaoh, I come to you in all humility. When I was in prison, after you locked me up, and you locked up the baker, and there was this Hebrew lad, this Hebrew youth that was able to discern our dreams, and he discerned them correctly. He was able to interpret them correctly. And so Pharaoh said, well, go send for him. So they send for Joseph, and they clean him up, and they put him in nice clothes. They say, make him look presentable. And now Pharaoh actually adds something to his dream. He says, not only did the scraggly cows eat the big cows, or the nice healthy cows, not only did the scraggly stalks swallow whole the good stalks, but it looked like they weren't fed. The scraggly cows, the thin, wasted cows, still look thin and gaunt, like nothing, like they hadn't eaten anything. So we added that. And Joseph's like, okay, look, it's one dream. And God is letting Pharaoh know what's going to happen. He's also telling Pharaoh, okay, how to deal with it. And basically, you're going to have 7 years of plenty, and then there's going to be 7 years of famine. Let Pharaoh set over Egypt a smart, business-oriented person, I'm making this in modern terms, of course, who can take all that grain and store it and save it and put it in a place where it's not going to rot, so that when the years of famine come, we'll be able to have food. And Pharaoh was so impressed, he makes him second in command of Egypt. And of course, then his brothers show up, but that's for another triennial. So what do we learn here? What's the message? The message is that Joseph had to endure 12, 14 years, okay, being away from his family when he was 17 in his 20s. Okay, he had to endure hardship. He was a prisoner, when most of us are, starting our lives and everything. And it turned into such a wonderful thing for him. He was second in command. He saved the world. We need to remember this because a lot of us lament when we have challenges and tragedies in our lives. We don't know where it's going to lead. Joseph showed us that when you do have that type of situation, a very challenging situation, where things seem hopeless, go with it, learn from it, take care of it, and you never know what's going to see at the end, right? Okay. All right. Remember that. So, Shabbat Shalom, happy Hanukkah. And if you're not Jewish and you're watching this, happy whatever it is you're celebrating. Okay. And thank you again for listening.